On the Jack Spring Electric Newsmaker Hotline, our good friend, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, joining us. Speaker, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are y'all?
Well, we're doing very well. We know your time is very tight, so let me just ask you, first of all, this whole thing with Jimmy Kimmel being taken off the air, they're positioning it as a free speech issue, saying the government is trying to shut them down. That's not the case, is it?
That's nonsense. These are free market principles at play. Jimmy's ratings have dropped precipitously, and I think he was losing money for the studio. ABC is a private company. They can hire and fire whomever they want. Mm-hmm. And if he says something that is not in accordance with the brand that they want to project to the world, then they were within their right. So this is not a First Amendment issue. That's the government that is not supposed to censor and silence you. But by the way, Mike, before we leave the subject, remember, yesterday, YouTube finally admitted what we all have known has been the case. The Biden administration, during that 4 years, they encouraged all the social media platforms to censor and silence conservatives. It's Jimmy Kimmel's side that is guilty of this, not the other.
Well, one thing, though, that did disturb me is the commissioner of the FCC did make comments about going after Jimmy Kimmel, saying it wasn't in the public interest. I didn't like those comments.
Yeah, look, Brendan Carr is the individual who said those words, and people have parsed a lot of what he said. I think what he was suggesting there is that, you know, the broadcast networks do have a certain degree of responsibility. It's supposed to be in the public's interest. That's the way the law works. And he was suggesting that, you know, making fun of or mocking the assassination of a young father and husband because he was engaging in free speech is not a good look. And it's something that, you know, regulators should consider probably. I mean, I'm not sure that's so far out of bounds. But look, all of this has been rectified. I think it's been a good lesson and reminder for people in the principles of free speech, and that the government has a role to play. But the free marketplace should decide these things, and I think it has.
And you made a very important distinction. It's broadcast networks. And unlike Jasmine Crockett that doesn't understand, Fox News is not a broadcast network. Cable don't operate under the same restrictions as under the FCC.
Right. There's a lot of things that Jasmine Crockett doesn't understand. Okay? So, but that's right. And there are, you know, legal standards and there are constitutional principles at play. And it behooves certainly elected members of Congress to understand those distinctions so they can help people sort through all this.
Mike, shifting gears, I remember the days when Rush Limbaugh, when we were talking government shutdowns, and Limbaugh would say, shut it down. That means you can't screw up. Where are we on keeping government funding and keeping government going? The Democrats are really fighting you.
Yeah, they're fighting for no reason. Let me just tell you quickly where we are. Republicans and I have been committed since I became Speaker to restoring regular order in the appropriations process. Why? Because that is how we ensure good stewardship of taxpayer funds. So it's like pushing a boulder uphill, Aaron, but we've been able to do that. We've gotten the Congress working again. We passed all 12 separate appropriations bills through our Appropriations Committee in the House on a bipartisan basis, by the way. We passed 3 off the House floor, and we're beginning conference negotiations on those 3 bills with the Senate because theirs differ a little bit. That hasn't happened since 2019, where the 2 chambers actually engaged to do that work. The problem is we're running out of clock because the end of the fiscal year is September 30th. So to keep the lights on and keep all these important negotiations going, we drafted a very simple 24-page, what we say clean, short-term, 7-week continuing resolution to get the job done. And guess what Chuck Schumer and the Democrats did? They, instead of going along with that to allow the process to work, they issued this quote-unquote counter-offer, okay, that says, oh, no, we don't just want to keep the government open. We want you to reinstate free health care for illegal aliens paid for by American taxpayers. We want you to add $500 million to prop up liberal news outlets. We want you to cut $50 billion from rural hospitals in America. I mean, all this crazy stuff, y'all. A massive $1.5 trillion in new spending they wanted to tack on to a simple 7-week funding bill to keep the appropriations process going. So not to get too deep in the weeds, but let me just say it simply. All of that is nonsense. There's no way that we could agree to any of that, and we won't, and the Democrats know it. So they're trying to force a shutdown. And if they do it, they're going to own the consequences.
So when does this come back up for a vote? What's the procedure now?
Well, we passed it out of the House and sent it over to the Senate, and it failed in the Senate because Schumer would not release Democrats to vote. Remember, you got to get 60 votes in the Senate, and they've only got 53 Republicans. So I talked to Leader Thune. He leads the Senate over there last night, and he's going to bring it up again when they get back. September 29th and 30th, he'll keep bringing it up and give them another chance to do the right thing. We certainly hope they will. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't understand what their play is. But we're going to keep doing the job and doing it in a responsible manner and doing well by taxpayers. And Chuck Schumer is going to engage in this nonsense. He's going to own the consequences if it shuts down.
I saw a piece this morning when I was putting my news together saying the president had, quote, chickened out of a meeting with the Democrats. You would classify it as a little differently, wouldn't you?
It's a joke. It's a joke. So Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, who leads the Democrats in the House, have painted themselves into a corner. They realize how absurd the situation is, and they have no way out of it. So what they're trying to do is shift some of the blame onto the president. They should not need a meeting with the president of the United States to do their jobs and fund the government. And the president's exactly right. He and I talked about it at length yesterday and the day before. And I said, look, when they get their job done, once they do the basic governing work of keeping the government open, Mr. President, then you can have a meeting with him, of course. It might be productive at that point. But right now, this is just a waste of his time. The president's a little bit busy right now. He doesn't have time to play referee for Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and their work in the House and the Senate. So I think that meeting happens later, but not before this deadline. And they've got to get their work done.
We're talking with House Speaker Mike Johnson. Mike, I know you knew personally Charlie Kirk. You were friends with Charlie in the tragic situation that took place there. We're in a position in this country that we've never been in. There's been political violence before, but the divisiveness that we are now, I know the answer. I know you know the answer. How do you communicate? How do we get away from this and start bringing the country back together?
Yeah. Sorry for the sirens in the background. That's a motorcade going through Shreveport. So
that literally is for you?
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm in my trucks and
That's so cool.
I know the motorcade moving through Shreveport right now.
Yeah, right. Look, let me just say this about Charlie. That memorial event in Arizona was just an incredible event. And Kelly and I got to fly with the president to there on Air Force One, and we did the whole thing. And on the way back, the president and I were talking about this, about Charlie and his approach. And I think it is the answer to your question. Charlie was a good friend of mine. We talked about this often, that, he loved debate, but he loved people more. You know what I mean? So, Charlie was a vigorous debater, but he never got angry, and he was not motivated by hate. It was exactly the opposite, And so the person on the other side of the table, even though he would defeat everybody in these arguments, disagreements, that was the point, is try to win them over to his side. He was the first person to reach out a hand of friendship, offer his arm around the shoulder of someone who he just debated, because it wasn't about the public policy principle. It was about the soul, as he said, of the person. And that's what Charlie was about. So he was motivated by love. There's a passage of scripture that he now both revered in the book of Romans, and it says, you're to be courageous and bold and strong, and it says, act like men. But let everything you do be done in love. And that was what Charlie's legacy is. And that's the model. I told all these guys, I think I spoke at 4 memorials so far for Charlie at the Kennedy Center. And we did one down at LSU before the football game against Florida. Just thousands of people all around the country following all this. And I said 2 things quickly. The best way you can honor the legacy of Charlie Kirk is to advance his principles and adopt his manner, adopt his approach. And I think if we do that, we honor what's best about America, about our country, about the foundational principles that put all this in place.
And what I deeply appreciate is the fact that he used politics, but he was unabashedly sharing his faith and professed Jesus Christ. And he was trying to reach these young men. He
was, and he did it as well as anyone ever has, because he knew how to speak directly to that. And, look, Charlie was about current policy, current squabbles, current debates. But more than that, he was about the permanent things, and that's another distinction I've been trying to make with everybody. We get wrapped around the axle on these temporal issues. But as the Apostle Paul said in the New Testament, we focus on the eternal, not the temporal, right? Ultimately, that's what it's about. And we do well to remember that, because what Charlie was trying to advance is the creed of America, the self-evident truth that it says in the Declaration that we're all created in God's image. We're all created equal. We have the same rights. And if you see one another as a creation made in the image of God, it changes your perspective. Don't look at people as your hated enemies. Look at them as your fellow created beings under God. And that's the premise of America. That's a premise that we're trying to continue, and that's what will keep us on the path to be the greatest, strongest, most free, most successful nation in the world.
And I love what I read. I can't take credit for it, but said Charlie Kirk was killed not holding a gun, not holding a knife, but holding a microphone.
So well said.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, no, your motorcade is moving. You're on a tight schedule. Thank you for squeezing us in. Love you deeply, and I'll see you later today.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Take care.
Thank you. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Micah McCarty. Coming up,